Hello and thank you for tuning in to Hope Channel Kenya, where we bring light to the family. I am your host Sally Oriko, and for those joining us for the first time, this is a brand new show called The First Aider, where we educate you on everything that you need to know about how to administer first aid to a victim or casualty, whether it is in your house or on the road or in your office or wherever you might be. I am joined today with our resident volunteer for St. John Ambulance, Monique Mogaka, and is also a training manager at Private Security Training Academy. Hello, Monique.
Hi.
Thank you for coming back with us and joining us. I would like to remind our viewers at this moment, the demonstrations that you will see on this program are demonstrations only. Please do not attempt to try this at home unless it is absolutely necessary. We shall be joined later by one of our volunteers who will be a casualty or a victim for this show, and his name is Geoffrey. Yes, Monique. So today we're talking about wounds and bleeding.
Yes.
Yes. What do we need to know about wounds and bleeding?
Wounds and bleeding. First of all, we need to understand what is bleeding. Bleeding at the same time is referred to as hemorrhage. It's the loss of blood from the body, and it can be internal bleeding or external bleeding. Internal bleeding is where part of your body organs are losing blood internally.
Inside the body?
Yes. It is not being transported to the right final destination. Maybe there's a rupture of the vessel, one of the vessels in your body, so the blood is flowing internally. External bleeding, as even the word is talking about, you can see it on top of the skin. There's a break in the skin and blood is oozing out. Yes.
So now, how do we will go step by step with this. Yes. Let's start with external bleeding. How do we administer first aid to someone who is bleeding externally?
First of all, you remember wounds and bleeding. A wound will be there because there is bleeding. So they are joined together. Chances are very high you may come across a casualty who is having two types of bleeding. Other than internal bleeding, there is a minor bleeding and there is severe bleeding. Your first aid interventions also will vary depending on whether it's minor or severe. Because in the case of a minor bleeding, your aim at that particular moment as a first aider is to ensure there is no cross infection. So you will have to clean the wound and dress that one. But when it's severe bleeding, your aim at that moment is to arrest immediately that bleeding. Because me and you, we have around a minimum of around 6 liters of blood, or 12 pints for that matter. If I lose 0.5 liters of blood, I feel dizzy. But if I lose more than 3 liters of blood, my heart can stop beating. So it's very critical to be able to analyze the casualty in that way, so that you are able to know exactly what is the right intervention you're supposed to do. Number 2, we have different types of wounds. We have abrasions, the way you can fall down and
bruise your skin.
Yes. So you'll find that there's quite a big part of the top skin is broken. Number two, you also have another type we call laceration wound. This is where you're having more like a sharp cut, like a razor blade can cut you deeply. We also have what we call puncture wound. A needle can get in a nail at the same time, that can lead to a puncture wound. We also have what we call a gunshot wound. That also, we're going to deal with it differently. But all these, generally, we are going to handle the wounds in 2 categories. How to deal with a general wound. And we also have 3 types of special vidondas that we're going to look at. There's the gunshot, we've talked about. There is also another one we call embedded object, where you have been stabbed with a knife, but it's stuck in your body. What are you supposed to do as a first aider? Are you supposed to pull it out or not? If you're not supposed to pull it out, how are you going to dress to ensure that the casualty is not losing blood? And lastly, we'll deal with an abdominal wound. Yes. It can be vertical, it can be horizontal. We'll also see how you're going to do that. So what we'll do now, we'll deal with a general type of
Wound.
wound. So we need to have a casualty, and as you're doing that, you also need to, all the time, anytime you're dealing with bleeding, protect yourself. Put on the gloves, and if you don't have the gloves, remember, use any available material, polythene paper, so that you ensure there is no contact between your hands and the fluids coming out of the casualty. So I think we need to have our casualty on board.
Yes, Geoffrey, you can come in now.
Thank you. Let's assume a casualty has a cut to his hand at the arm. You have just come in. He was doing a few things in the kitchen. In the process, unfortunately, he cut part of his arm. He is bleeding. What are you supposed to do? Anytime, you may be able to that you know the casualty, but anytime you approach any casualty, introduce yourself.
Always.
Yes. I'm a qualified first aider. Kindly, can I help? But if it was at home, definitely you know the person, so you don't need to do that. You can immediately come in and find out what happened. But at that moment, as you're doing all that, you're still assessing. Is that area safe for you to offer first aid? Maybe the gentleman was carrying a bucket of water while he was cutting a piece of meat. In the process, the water fell down. When he was trying to control the water, he cut his hand. So the floor is full of water. So you need to ensure that you make that area safe, or you get the casualty out of that danger zone. Once you have ensured that the area is safe for your casualty, in that process, you're also able to assess whether the wound is severe or minor. In this case, we're assuming actually it's a minor. So you can tell the casualty to raise his hand and apply direct pressure. That will give you some time to put on the gloves if you have not done that. Have the dressings ready and everything so that you can intervene. But at the same time, all this period, keep on engaging your casualty. Geoffrey, what happened?
I was cut by an abati.
Paul, I'm going to help you. Let me get the dressing. Do I need to... In this process, you need to engage the casualty. Kindly, you can engage the casualty for me as I'm preparing. But if you're alone, you need to be able to know how to engage the casualty as you're doing the dressing.
Engaging the casualty meaning just keep them talking about whatever it is. It could be a topic like the weather.
Exactly.
Or something of the sort. So that, what is the purposes of engaging the casualty?
You're actually taking away the mind and the concentration of the casualty from the pain and the state that the casualty is in, so that it can even give you ample time to do the
prepare
dressing.
yourself and
that makes the casualty relax. The moment they relax, even the bleeding will slow down. This is the dressing.
Okay.
And this is a sterile dressing. We have two types of dressings: sterile and non-sterile dressing. Non-sterile dressing is the sense that you may decide to use your clean handkerchief. But make sure that it's clean. But also remember, cleanness is relative. So this is the sterile dressing. This is the part which is supposed to land
on the wound.
Yes. So kindly remove your hand. You place that part there. And at the same time, you can still engage your casualty as you're tying. Kindly, Jeff, hold this for me.
Yes, sir.
Yes. Thank you. Hope it's not that tight.
Yeah, it's not tight.
So the casualty can also help you when, in cases where you're by yourself and they're not really, and they're able to assist you in administering first aid to themselves.
Yes. And in that way, you're engaging the casualty. So the casualty will not feel that pain, and at the same time, you'll make the dressing work much easier for you. Thank you. And always when you're tying, make sure you tie the knots which can easily be untied.
So that when they actually, after administering first aid, they need to seek medical attention still.
Yes. Remember the knots that we learned in our Pathfinder classes?
And Scouts.
Scouts, yes.
Yes.
It comes hand in hand.
Yes.
Now, that is dressing that particular wound. But there can be special cases. You have finished dressing the casualty. But in a few minutes, you see blood still oozing out of this dressing. What are you supposed to do? You are not supposed to remove this dressing. You're supposed to take another dressing and put it on top of this particular dressing. Very critical. Take note of that.
Another dressing similar to the one that you already placed,
Yes.
or a different type of dressing?
The same type. The same type. Okay. Let's improvise now and use this one. So there's a point that we want to bring out here. So this is the second dressing. Because in the first dressing, blood oozed out. You don't remove it. You place another dressing on top. Jeff, kindly assist me on this. The same way.
How tight or how loose are you supposed to
It should
tie?
not be very tight because you need to allow the blood to flow and you need to be checking the capillary refill for the blood flow.
That's how you know if it's tight or if it's loose.
And at the same time, the casualty is conscious. Ask the casualty. Jeff, is that better or are you feeling it's very tight?
No, it's okay.
It's okay. So engage the casualty. The casualty will tell you. Do the same tying of the knot that it can easily be untied. And make sure that your dressing is neat. Just tuck it in. What if blood comes out of the second dressing? What happens? In this case now, you remove all the dressings and start dressing afresh. Take note of that. Blood coming out of the first dressing, add another dressing on top. But if it comes out of the second dressing, remove all the dressings and start dressing afresh. But now this guy, you see, look at even the way the hand is. It's very uncomfortable. Is there something you can do to ensure that your casualty is comfortable? You need to tie this hand into two types of slings. We have an arm sling and we have an elevation sling. So when does your casualty qualify for an arm sling and when does your casualty qualify for an elevation sling? If your casualty has an injury from the wrist all the way to the shoulders, anywhere along this point, this casualty qualifies for an arm sling. If the casualty has an injury, the palm. How do we call this bone?
The collarbone.
The collarbone.
Yes.
This one, or the shoulder blades, the casualty qualifies for an elevation sling. So how do you tie an arm sling? How do you tie an elevation sling? So that at least your casualty is comfortable. You take your triangular bandage.
Triangular bandage.
Is what will assist you in tying an arm sling or an elevation sling. So we have agreed that this casualty at this point, it qualifies for an arm sling because of the location of
the wound,
the injury. And when you take your triangular bandage, it's actually a triangular.
It's the shape of a triangle.
Yes. Okay. So how are you going to, where are you going to place? This is the tip.
And the ends.
And the two ends. So all the time, your tip should land where? At the elbow. Whether you are tying an arm sling or whether you are tying an elevation sling. Jeff, I want you to move this way. It's okay. So get your triangular bandage. Wish you could have also been trying this. That then depending on how you're going to balance it.
So always the tip should be at the point of the elbow.
Yes, and the fingers of the casualty should always be well covered inside there. And it's always advisable, when you're tying the knot, do not tie it.
Right at the neck.
This, yes. Tie it next to
collarbone.
this depression at the collarbone. Because if you tie it here, remember this is part of your central nervous system.
Okay.
Be exerting a lot of force there. And it's always advisable that the knot should be away from the injured arm, meaning it should be at this end. So when you are placing your triangular bandage, you need to place it in a way it gives you a bigger end on this end so that you will be able to tie. There's this depression here. And you see, if you had a t-shirt with a collar, you can tuck it nicely inside there and cover it there. You are not going to leave these ends hanging like this. So you're going to ensure that you tighten the loose ending and tuck it in your first aid box. In fact, this particular triangular bandage had a pin.
Safety pins.
Yes. But in this state, you may be in a state that you're even tense. So in the process of trying to put the safety pin, you pierce through the casual. So if you can, avoid and just tighten it and tuck it in. This end, in this position, you can still check whether the circulation is okay. This guy, his hand can be swinging. You may still want to immobilize it. So you take another triangular bandage. Because you really want your casualty to be comfortable. That is the aim. In the process of trying to ensure that the casualty is bleeding and everything is controlled, you also want him to be comfortable in that particular state. Make it a narrow bandage, and now you have it. You're not going to immobilize all their hands. So don't make this guy a prisoner. So let him have that hand released out. Now you're going to tie this knot
underneath the other arm.
How do you call this part of the cloth? The sling?
The sleeve? The side? The seam?
Yes, the seam.
Yes.
Thank you. So that's where you're going to have your knot. Is that tight? Okay. Then tuck it in. At least you have dressed the casualty. You have immobilized that hand so that it does not keep on swinging. And you have made sure that it's immobilized in a comfortable way and the casualty is smart.
What is the purposes of fastening that, not immobilizing the arm that has been injured?
What is?
What is the purpose? Why are you fastening that?
You want to ensure
bandage?
that the hand is not swinging, so that it's in a. This is the most comfortable position. You know, if the hand hangs like this, all the pressure, the blood will be flowing there. It may even increase chances of continuous bleeding.
Okay.
But this is the most comfortable position for any injury because there is no much weight exerted here. It's held and it's supported. Yes.
Okay. At this point, I also would like to again remind our viewers that please do not try this at home unless it is absolutely necessary. And if children are watching, please, adults, please supervise your kids so that nothing of this nature happens. So let's move on to the next type of wound now.
Remember, this is in most, depending on where the casualty has been injured. This is a general way of dealing with kidonda, how to dress it. So now we want to look at special types of
wounds.
Yes. We mentioned 3. There's a gunshot wound, there's abdominal, and there's an embedded
Wound.
object wound type of. Now, let's start with the gunshot. Anytime we have those brothers and sisters who visit at the right time when they know it's the right time, and unfortunately, one of your colleagues at work, at home, or even at our church premises has been shot, what are you supposed to do? There's a specific thing that you're going to do because the dressing will partially remain the same as what we did here, but there's a special intervention that you need to do to ensure that the casualty's life is not in danger. And now that's why we are concentrating on the gunshot to the chest because it can hit you on the leg, the arms and all that, but now we are concentrating here because of the position and the vital body organ located at this point. Because here we know there are lungs beneath, the heart and the lungs. All of them are here. So once you have a gunshot or you have been hit by a bullet from the gun, of course, the entry is usually small, but the exit,
Is large.
yes. Reason, there's some physics there and everything, but when the bullet gets in, it actually, when it's getting out, it will rupture inside there and it will come out with a big piece of flesh. Hence the reason why the exit is going to be
Larger.
open. But from this end, you have your lungs, and that located at the chest. So if there's a hole where the bullet pierced through, chances are very high hair will get in directly. And that should be your concern as a first aider. After you have taken care of all the other necessities as we have agreed, the area is safe, then those guys have gone away, now you can offer the first aid. If you see the casualty is conscious, let your casualty sit down or help your casualty going down. Just go down, Zaka, Pole. And in all this time, you'll keep on reassuring your casualty, all will be well, don't worry. Kindly, I want you to apply direct pressure. Hold it tightly there. Then, the first thing you will do, you need to get a polythene paper. Expose that area. Once you have exposed the area, get the polythene paper. Kindly remove your hand. You'll be okay, don't worry. I'm here to help you. I'm using this polythene to ensure first that hair does not get directly into your lungs. Because if it does that, they may collapse. But now with this, at least we will ensure that you will arrive in the hospital still safe. What we have done, we have ensured that we have put tapes on the 3 ends. But the lower part, we have left it open. So that if there is any blood oozing out, it can come when it feels below the diaphragm, it gets out. Are we together? This polythene will not allow hair to get directly
into the wound.
In the wound. Then you get your dressing now. And remember all that time you have to take the right size of the dressing. Don't use a very small dressing and don't use a very big dressing for that matter. And all this time you should also be engaging your casualty. Kindly, Nzaka, hold that for me. Good, there's no much bleeding now. And I think your breathing is okay, so all will be okay, don't worry. Then take another dressing, but in this case now we have opted to use this wide triangular bandage. We have made it to be a wide bandage so that it can cover the whole part. Oh yes. Are you still feeling the pain?
It's reducing.
Don't worry. Can we call your wife or?
Yeah, if possible, call her.
Okay. Kindly, can you still remember the number of your wife?
Yes, I remember.
Kindly, you can give it to my colleague to make a phone call. You can give it out.
Yeah, 0722.
Okay, 0722 29 66. Okay. So don't worry, my colleague will call her and she'll be here in a minute and she has already called the ambulance. Okay. So this should be the position as long as the casualty is conscious. Maybe the casualty may deteriorate and become unconscious. All unconscious casualties while breathing should be placed in the recovery position. But in this case, we are going to place this casualty in the recovery position to this injured side. Because we may never know the state of the lung, to the left lung. So we need to give the right lung some space so that it can be able to sustain the breathing in and breathing out for the casualty.
Okay.
Keep on monitoring your casualty after every 10 minutes as you wait for the ambulance. With the use of the polythene and the right dressing, you will enhance the survival of this casualty. Yes.
Okay.
And remember, there is this other part, the opening. You'll also dress it.
The same
Not
way
necessarily, but if you have the time and the materials, you can use the polythene and dress. But this one, you can just cover using the sterile dressing. But if there's a polythene also, ensure so that the hair does not get in through this end. Are we together? Thank you.
So that's how you administer first aid to a gunshot wound.
Yes.
So now let's move on to the next.
We have the embedded object. Let's assume the casualty, they were engaging in an argument and somebody stabbed the casualty and the knife is stuck in there. What we always advise, if that knife is so deep and it has been stuck, you are advised as a first aider not to pull that object, that knife, out.
Is it advisable?
One, chances are very high in the process of stabbing this casualty, the knife may have cut an artery. If you take it out, the blood will be oozing. You may not be in a state to control that. Number two, in the process of going in, the soft tissues were cut. And since it's stuck, when you're pulling out, you're actually pulling those soft tissues and tearing them the more. Even now, the repair of those tissues will be harder if you pull it out, because you may not be able to know how to pull it, and the network of those vessels, you will destroy them. So that's why you're advised, it's good if you dress that wound while that particular object is embedded. So what are you supposed to do? Get your improvised, let's say you have taken away your triangular bandage, form something like a donut. You know, it has...
A donut is like a circular object.
Yes. Form that. Then have it there. See, now the object is inside there. So, see, in this process, the casualty can be assisting you. Get your bandage. Remember, we always recommend a sterile bandage. If you don't have, try to use a clean bandage to ensure that there is no cross infection, the casualty. So let me use this one. Hope it's not very painful, Geoffrey.
No.
If this particular object is not very long, remember you can have that area, just cover it up there without exerting any pressure, because you'll exert pressure on either sides.
And maybe push the object further inside.
Yes. Okay. Hold this for me. This one here, just here. Just here. Use this hand. Okay. See, now also even the positioning itself will help you. Okay. Let me just tighten it first. All will be well, Geoffrey. Okay. Now in this case, you take another. Now you can apply it on this side. See, we're applying pressure on either side. Can you sit upright? Okay. Okay. You also make sure on the other side. So this is what we are saying. You must get the right size of the dressing so that you are able to cover the entire dressing. The entire yes. Can have another one. If you have as many, you could try to use as many so that you ensure that your casualty's wound is well covered. See, I'm applying the pressure on either side, but not directly on top of
the wound.
Yes. Oh, yes. Now that is slightly better. Okay. So you are going to apply pressure on either side, but the main thing here is do not
pull out the object.
Yes, the object. Lastly, what about an abdominal wound? It can be vertical, it can be horizontal. So let's assume it's a horizontal. If the casualty sits in this position, what happens?
It closes.
It closes. So that should be the treatment position. Do not put that casualty in this position because you are opening it up. If it's vertical, if you put the casualty in this position, it opens. So what you're supposed to do, let the casualty lie on his back so that it has that natural closing. If the intestines are out, and in most cases they might be out, the texture of the intestines is wet. And that is what you're supposed to maintain because that is what gives the intestines life. So how are you going to maintain that as you're offering the first aid? You need to cover them first with a polythene. So in the process, they'll be sweating in there and maintaining that wetness. Do not attempt to insert the intestines
Back into
back
the body.
into the stomach. Don't do that. Just cover them in the position that they are at that particular moment. So use the polythene, get them inside, cover them completely, then now get your dressing and cover them. And now then cover your casualty, then transport them to hospital in the most comfortable position, depending on the nature
Of the wound.
Yes.
Okay.
Actually, if you take note of those three special cases and the general way of dressing a wound, then you'll be able to ensure that you save the lives of casualties anytime they're bleeding.
Yes.
Yes.
Well, thank you, Manike, and thank you, Geoffrey, for joining us on this episode of Wounds and Bleeding. I would like to thank Manike and Geoffrey for helping us and educating us on this week's episode on wounds and bleeding. Please feel free to give us your feedback and ask questions about anything that you've learned on this program. Our email is info@hck.co.ke, or you can ask questions via our Facebook, which is Hope Channel Kenya, our Twitter, Hope_Kenya, or you can access our YouTube channel and leave a comment down below on the episodes at Hope Channel Kenya. That's Hope Channel Kenya on our YouTube platform. I've been your host, Sally Rico. Please be safe and God bless.